Hi, Eric Linask here with TMC. We're here at Cloud Expo in New York City, and I'm talking with CiRBA's Andrew Hillier. Andrew, good morning. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for talking to me.
So, start off. Tell me a little bit about CiRBA and maybe some of the things that you're hearing from your customers as some of the challenges that they're seeing.
Yeah, well, so CiRBA is basically automated capacity control software. So what we do is we look at all the workloads in an environment, all the demands on the resources, and we look at all the capacity supplies. So it's really a supply and demand challenge. And we say, well, how can you optimize this? Because a lot of times organizations don't do a great job of matching those two things. And with cloud environments, it becomes more and more challenging because you have a lot of dynamic demands on the environments. You still have the enterprise applications. And so we kind of bring a science to the alignment of supply and demand, which really drives up the density and drives down the risk of the operating environments. We see a lot of priorities in our customers around reducing cost, reducing risk, increasing automation. So for example, you can use our product to defer hardware purchases by fitting more workloads on what you already have. You can increase your software density, so you can buy less software to manage that. And you can enable true automation because we generate very, very specific actions that you can just act on in your environment. You don't necessarily need humans to get involved in the loop. So for clouds, that's very important to drive high levels of automation.
So certainly those factors or those challenges are things that we've heard from enterprise executives for a little while now. Talk about some of the specific ways that CiRBA is helping overcome those obstacles.
Well, like I said, it's really all about looking at the workloads to a detailed level. And we actually use an analogy to the game of Tetris. And if you can see in the shot here, this I'm not sure if you want to come over and look at this visual, but what we find is that if you look at a data center and the way the workloads are placed in it, it looks like a badly played game of Tetris. So a lot of times people will start VMs and put them in different places, and they're not really thinking a lot about how they interact with the other VMs around them. And it's a very complex thing to do because there's lots of different dimensions. There's CPU, memory, I/O. So what ends up happening is you get this jumbled environment where the density is quite low. And so you're wasting money, but you're also exhibiting a lot of risk. You have the opportunity for workloads to run into each other, contend for resources. So that's kind of the initial state. Now, conveniently, I can turn this around. With the analytics we have, we basically, this is very analogous to what we do, is that we will look at all the permutations of all the workloads and lay them out in a way that you'll make the optimal use of your capacity. So the savings are very significant. We see about typically about a 48% increase in density in a running environment when you apply these analytics. And the real, I guess, gap is that if you look at all the tools that are out there in the market, there's nothing else that really does this. There are products that will move a VM if an environment gets busy. There are ones that will make a VM bigger or smaller if it needs more or less resources, but they don't look at the whole picture and say, how are all the workloads interacting with each other, and how can we optimize that? So that's fairly unique to our product. And again, it looks like this from a Tetris perspective, but in real life what it does is it really drives down costs and really drives up the efficiency of the environments.
Now, alternatively, could enterprises opt to use public cloud resources instead?
Absolutely. So one of the other things that we do is there's really two parts to our product. One is what we call a control console, and that will play Tetris within your environment. There's another component called a reservation console, and you can think of it that most organizations have multiple hosting environments where they can run workloads. Our reservation console sits above that and says, how do I make decisions across all of those? So I have a new application going out, which one should it run in? Which one has the right storage and the right amount of capacity for that? So we can make decisions across multiple hosting environments, almost on a global level. Well, literally on a global level. That can include external capacity. So as an organization, I might say, you know what, I have this application, maybe I don't need to host it internally, maybe I can run it in external capacity. You can make that decision as well. So we have both the control of the lower level capacity and also the decision making. It's like a hotels.com for IT. You can look across all your infrastructure and say, you know, I have this family coming in, they have a dog, they have 3 children, where should they go? And we can bring a science to that as well. And that's extremely important because most of the customers we see right now don't have any way to make that decision. They've spent years getting specs for new applications and buying hardware. And now they get a spec for a new application and they have to figure out where they can run it on what they already have, and they don't have any way of doing that. So that's the console that's up on the screen behind us here, and we just released it in January, and we're getting a very good response to it because it brings a science to the art of figuring out where new apps should go, internally or externally.
Is the lack of these kinds of management tools creating a scenario where enterprises are not moving their stuff into the cloud, and does this kind of a management capability then entice them to instead opt and make that decision and go into the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a fear that people have And it's very legitimate that if I don't know how my application is going to work in the cloud, then obviously you're going to be hesitant to put it out there. And for years people talk about security concerns, but even just the raw capabilities. So we view the world in terms of capabilities and requirements. Hosting environments have certain capabilities. They have certain CPU, memory, I/O capabilities. They have certain security configurations. And so what you want to do is make sure that the requirements of your application are met by that. And it's kind of guesswork unless you have a way of modeling that, and that's exactly what we do. So we say that external hosting environment has all of these capabilities. You can't run your critical app there because it doesn't have the right data snapshotting strategy, but you can run your dev test there. So rather than making a guesswork, again, we bring a science to that and say, well, here it is in black and white. You have all these environments, of which some of them can host your environment, your application, some can't. And I think that brings a lot of the fear down in the decision-making process. If you can say to someone, look, we've looked at your app and all of its workload patterns and all of its requirements, it will be fine in that external environment, that makes it a very different discussion. But without that analytics, I think people are just going on trust. It's difficult for them to put the crown jewels into something that they don't understand.
Do you find that your customers, with the enhanced views into their workloads and the enhanced management capabilities of those workloads, are bringing more into the cloud or doing more with their cloud resources?
Well, I think for us, and we have some pretty large customers, so we tend to have very large enterprises, and we don't see a lot of external cloud yet. We see everybody's building very large internal clouds, so we have some customers with extremely large internal clouds, and we're being used to manage that. They're not necessarily going full hybrid yet, but all of their design of all of their stack is for hybrid. So everybody's preparing for it, whether they're using it yet or not. So what we find is there might be shadow groups that are using external capacity. In the core IT, we're seeing most of the large organizations are still internal cloud, but intending to go external. Now we have some partners that use our product in their cloud offerings too, where they can start to burst to external capacity. But I think it's early, especially at the upper end of the market in the large enterprises now. But I think again, it's on everybody's mind. Everybody's designing their environments to be able to do that in the future, and eventually start running less and less internally. But it's going to take some time to get there.
Well, that's certainly something we can look forward to, and CiRBA's customers at least should be ready for it. Andrew, as always, thanks for joining me here at Cloud Expo.
It's a great chat with you.